know that I will love you. Lately since we parted, I truly know that I need you.
He has a way with a song because his voice, you know, has so much to say within it.
I thought he was original. He just had a way of putting it together that was all his own.
Or I'll fly with the force of a rainbow. The dream of gold will be waiting in your eyes.
And he didn't really look like anybody else. I guess he didn't really have the archetypal image of what a rock star should look like.
Because you got a love so strong. You just can't do me wrong. Wait till tomorrow night. I wanna treat you right.
I first became aware of Simply Red around the tail end of 1984, probably, when they did their first gigs in London, and were pretty hotly tipped as a really good young white soul band from the north of England.
I've been laid up from work, my rent is due. My kids all need brand new shoes. So I went to the bank to see what they could do. They said, son, look like bad luck got a hold on you. But it's too tight to mention.
A lot of the feeling at first within the industry was that it was some kind of retro band, that, you know, he was doing R&B, that there was no place for it. There was no place for soul except by soul artists from America.
I went to my brother.
So we tried to come up with something that was slightly different, had an energy. It's all about energy, man, and those kids from Manchester at that time, they were really, really strutting.
We just carved our own little niche out straight away. We did our first show to 200 people, second show to 400 people, third show to 1,200 people, and a bunch of record companies there. And we signed, and it was really very quick. And then, you know, first single release, it was a hit.
He's passing all kinds of bills from down on Capitol Hill, and I don't like it. But it's too tight to mention. Cutbacks.
First I really knew of him was when he released that song Holding Back the Years of Simply Red, and which was a landmark tune because it was the most successful attempt yet by a British musician, never mind an ex-punk musician, a British musician, to actually successfully imitate the style of basically 70s American soul.
Thinking of the fear I've had so long, when somebody hears, listen to the fear that's gone.
When I first heard Holding Back the Years in 1985, it was such an event for me to see this young kid from England with this sound, and it just gave me a thrill to hear a new voice on the horizon. I knew that he was going to do great things.
I'll keep holding on. I'll keep holding on.
I knew. I thought it'd be number one record in America. I remember speaking to someone at Electra America saying this could be a number one single, you know, and it was.
You know, literally about a year before, I was on the dole, you know, living on £25 a week, and then all of a sudden, I'm number one in America. And it really did come quickly. It wasn't, you know, it was literally within sort of 2 years or something.
I've wasted all my tears.
Simply Red was always Mick Hucknall. I mean, it was almost like his stage name. I mean, I don't think there was ever any doubt that he was calling the shots. He was the singer. He was the focal point of interest.
Nothing ever
One of the things that was clear was that the interest was there from the get-go because of Mick's voice.
And the way to approach it was to see Mick as Simply Red and present to the public a collective group of musicians who would be, and the public would only get to see that really live and in video.
I'll keep holding on so tight.
I suppose I thought, well, maybe, you know, the attention might have been equal, but it was fairly soon on in the process that we realised how it was going to be, that the focal point was directly going to be on Mick, and we would kind of get seen in the background now and again.
I always felt a bit uncomfortable about that, and virtually every single time I've made an album, I've sort of said to my management, don't you think we should have a picture of the band on it or something like that? And they started using the reasons of it being marketability and someone having a look that's very distinctive, and that it basically they'd say to me, look, it just sells better if they have something they can relate to.
I mean, again, that's where, you know, as far as it being a democratic band, there wasn't any democracy. It was like, you know, Mick's going on the cover, that's what sells albums, he's, you know, what's being promoted.
And gradually, over years, it became less and less of a group thing. And certainly by the time Stars was made, it was very much Mick in the driving seat.
The man who tried to hurt you, he's explaining the way I'm feeling.
From the end of Picture Book to the beginning of Stars, there was 6 or 7 years, so quite a large gap in which time various personnel had come and gone.
It seemed like the end of that road, you know, like with a band playing these songs. It felt like we needed to change the next record needed to be different.
It's at that time as well that Soul to Soul made their album Keep On Moving, and I'd heard first time I'd met Nelly Hooper around that time, and I really liked the way in which they'd used drum machines that didn't sound synthetic. They sounded like quite organic. And I'd said to Stuart, I wanted to work with, who's the guy who's made this sound? Who's the guy? I want to work with him. And one of the guys that had worked on that was Gota Yoshiki.
I'm a programmer, but not only drum machine kind of computer programmer, maybe because I'm playing drums. So he wanted to have little human, but not just human. They're just not just digital. So analog and digital kind of meet together, kind of groove that he was after. So Fritz and everybody else start playing a song, explain me the melody, start singing and everything. So I need to give them a tempo. So I just start off like click, which is like, let's say something got me started like this, bass drum. And then they're playing along and I start feeling that it's kind of like I'm gonna put the snares and hi-hats. And which is still sounds, as you can tell, it's like just like machine drums.
I was a bit slow to catch on, but I basically sat in a studio for 3 weeks doing absolutely nothing whilst, you know, Gota, who was there at the time, programmed all the drums.
At that point, the idea was that maybe Chris could still be our drummer, but would have to play the stuff that Gota had put on the record.
At that time, it was the bridge between programming and drumming that had gotten me attracted to Gota, and I think Chris's fate was sealed when Gota just casually announced one afternoon that he could, oh, I play drums too. And I'm like, really?
I think they'd probably decided they were getting rid of me before, but nobody had the balls to tell me.
I still really like Chris. It was a very, very difficult thing to have to do. But I've always believed that you've just got to be ruthless for the music. The music is what makes me ruthless. The music is what makes me a good guy or a bad guy, whichever way you look at it. You know, if you're on the end of being fired, then I'm the bad guy. But I do it for the music. It's always about the music.
Miles Davis broke his band up every 3 or 4 years. Marvin Gaye didn't have a regular backing band. I mean, the white rock ethos, which says, you know, it's a kind of band of brothers, all for one and one for all, isn't really appropriate to what Hucknall's doing.
It was just time to let it grow up a little bit and become, again, part of the moment it was alive in, you know. So we thought we would add some program drums to the rhythm section. There was a change in the bass player, and I had come across a great bass player out of Sheffield named Sean Ward, who I made a record with a band he had called Everyday People, and he could play. He really understood that funk thing.
And with my sort of funk soul background, you know, because I love all that stuff, and possibly, you know, you probably thought north of England as well, you know, get these guys together, you know, and see what happens, and it worked.
Hector Pereira had come along on New Flame. I had met him in Brazil the year before and brought him into New Flame, and he was a huge help on New Flame. So I knew I had him.
I kind of already knew his style, what he expected, and I know he's very minimalist. And I'm fine with that.
To Mick's credit, he really always wanted to surround himself with the best musicians he could, and that's what he asked me to do. So this wasn't the Simply Red that came out of Manchester.
It was a change that needed to be made, and it had a profound effect on the sound of that record.
So we're going to begin with something that got me started, and it's a good example of how we would build these tracks. Is Mick would sing the song in the control room to myself and Gota, and we'd establish a tempo, and Gota would lay down a little bit of a drum loop that we would end up keeping. It would be the basis of what this thing was built off. So we would have him singing, and we'd put the loop together, and then we would, once the loop was laid down, we'd go into the studio, and I'd send the bass, guitar, piano, and Mick out there, and we'd begin framing this thing, creating the arrangement. So we'd listen to the loop a little bit, and then we'd drop a bass line in. We would bring the piano in. And that's Fritz McIntyre, who from the very beginning of Simply Red was a huge part of the sound of this band. Very simple guitar parts usually. Like Hector Pereira would play something built around the piano parts. Question and answer kind of thing. And the two of them would be playing together, and then the bass and drums would be playing together, really.
I give it all up for you. Yes, 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 I would.
Well, the way we did the vocals right through this album and all the albums is he would do a scratch vocal when we framed the record. So sometimes the scratch vocal would tell us the plot, and in a couple of times it was the final vocal. Other times he would come back more than usual. He would come back and do a final vocal once all of the stuff was on it, so he could put on his earphones and hear the record and then really perform to it.
Something got me started. You know that I will love you. Lately since we parted, I truly know that I need you. I give it all up for 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 you. Yes, 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 I would.
then we would add Ian Kirkham playing his solo.
We started Stars in Paris, but that was a very kind of bleak time for us because it was the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, and we were staying in a hotel, and on one side of the hotel was the Bank of Iraq, and on the other side of the hotel was the Bank of Iran.
I know that it got to a point that it got a little bit like serious, because I remember there was a bank, right? A bank of the Arabs Emirate, like on the corner, that got bombed. It was something like that. And then there was a consulate, a Iraq consulate or something like that, that also kind of got like some bomb scare. So, and we were all in that same block.
I remember I went out to shopping and I came back and the whole street was blocked by police. We couldn't get back into the hotel. It was war in there. And then we going to get in a bus together and going to the studio.
My God, the studio was like being in a bunker. It was in some sort of industrial estate. It was ugly, and it sort of fitted in with the war. We'd have the TV on, watching all these missiles hit Baghdad or wherever, and it really felt like we were in this war zone. I think it just all got too much for us. We just were all getting really bogged down in this war and this ambience there. And Stuart said, look, we've got to get out of here. And he moved us. He found another studio called Condulma in Mogliano Veneto, just outside Venice.
We were suddenly in this beautiful setting, this beautiful environment, and you know, with just surrounded by great countryside, and Venice, 20 minutes down the road. It was really hard work.
And even though we were in Italy, it felt very at home for us because we'd had a lot of success in Italy. And some things clicked into gear just because we were there.
Everything was perfect, no excuses now. And not that I ever needed excuses, but this time around it felt like everything was right, and I felt this was going to be a monster.
I'm the one who took you for granted. I've made my mistakes. Wake up, let's not break up. You've got a love so strong. You really turn me on. Wait till tomorrow night. I'm gonna treat you right.
Some of these songs were just great. You could tell from right away that they were going to be great records. So, you know, records are about songs, man. You know what I mean? And you can only make a great record with a great song. You can make a good record with a good song, but these were great songs, and we did them justice.
I used to sit at home with an acoustic guitar and a Sony Walkman, and I would write the songs that way. And I wrote the songs that way all the way through the Stars album.
I remember some songs he just explained just a cappella, and they explain everything, really. You can hear the other things around it.
Sometimes he'd strum on the guitar a few chords and he'd sing the melody, and from the melody the rest of us would grasp ideas that he would listen to, and he would challenge, and we would change as he challenged. And it moved us forward to a point where the song eventually defines itself.
I think the way to tell a good song is to, if you can strip it right down to the very bare bones with the melody, the lyrics, and very basic chords, and if it still engages you and you feel some emotion from it, and you want to listen to it, then you know you've got a great song.
Anyone who ever held you would tell you the way I'm feeling. Anyone who ever wanted you would try to tell you what I feel inside. The only thing I ever wanted was the feeling that you ain't faking. The only one you ever thought about. Wait a minute, can't you see that I wanna fall from the stars straight into your arms? I feel ya, I hope you comprehend.
By the time we got to doing Stars, Mick had decided that he was going to, by working all the time, doing shows and everything, his range had opened up and he wanted to sing in a lower range. He was saying, you know, getting more mature, he wants to bring the range down a little bit. I didn't quite agree with him because his success had been from, you know, like singing high, but on Stars, he insisted that we did it in this key. And as you can hear, the vocal
Tried to hurt you.
is rather low.
He's explaining the way I'm feeling for all the jealousy I caused you. States the reason why.
But when it comes to the chorus, he sings the backgrounds as he did on most of this album, and that's where he was able to raise it and sing in his more natural, higher range, so the contrast was very effective.
Can't you see that I wanna fall from the stars straight into your arms? I feel ya, I hope you comprehend.
And, it worked.
Too many hearts are broken. A lover's promise never came with a man.
I think that there's a sort of a theme throughout the record of being famous and what that means and how do you keep yourself normal. I've had this fixation with stardom and what that does to a person. Does it make you a complete twat, you know? And do you sort of like think, well, how do I normalize myself living in this kind of like fake plastic bullshit world and sort of get back to sort of being the guy that could go into the pub in Manchester? And I've always had that in me. That's the tension, I think, between the famous guy and the private guy. And that in some of the lyrics, I think I want to fall from the stars straight into your arms. It's just all about sort of escaping from that.
I think one of the things we saw with Stars was the fact that he was very aware that he wanted to move Simply Red away from even being vaguely thought of as a kind of soul tribute band, a soul covers band. It's the first Simply Red album on which there are no cover versions. It's all his own stuff, and I think he really felt maybe, perhaps again to prove his critics wrong, that he needed to prove himself as a songwriter.
And I actually couldn't believe it, because Something Got Me Started sounded like an obvious first single. Stars sounded like an obvious second single. And then there was For Your Babies, which was just like, I don't believe this. This is beyond great.
You've got that look again, the one I hoped I
in my pulse roller coaster in.
Because it was such a crossover lyric. You know, it was all. I think he wrote it because I think Elliot and Andy and lots of his friends were all having kids at the time, so I think it was all around him, so he wrote it then.
It was a very sweet song. It appeared to be about my newly born kid, amongst others. I wouldn't have expected him to use it as the subject of a song. But I also think that it showed lyrically at that point that emotionally he was very connected.
I try to give you everything you need. I can see that it gets to you.
Well, Babies was very much influenced by my Elliot Rashman and Andy Dodd, because they both had kids virtually at the same time, and it was a great instruction for me seeing how they changed. So the lyric was very, very much based around watching the two of them dealing with their kids.
Her faith is amazing. The pain that she goes through, contained in the hope for you. Your whole world has changed. The years spent before seem more cloudy than blue. In many ways, your baby's controlling when you haven't laid down for days. For the poor, no time to be thinking. They're too busy finding ways, and
I'm sure Elliot won't mind me telling you this, but when I first played him the demo of it, he really lost the plot. He sobbed uncontrollably. He was very, very emotional when he heard it, and it makes me a bit emotional just thinking about that. And I remember I had to just leave the room and just let him kind of deal with it.
I don't believe in many things, but in you I do.
He's a very, very emotional man, and he might hide it behind a bit of macho bluff and bluster, but there's a great deal of emotional depth there. And because he also enjoys and loves life a lot, I think he got off on watching me get off on being a dad, and that was good enough for him.
You know I do most anything you want every day. I try to give you everything you need. We'll always be there for you.
In most of the songs I've written, I could, at some point during the song, I can tell you what that's about specifically, who, where, when. You know, I always try and write from a certain amount of reality with a little bit of artistic license thrown in.
I've got to stand up for myself. This society don't care about nobody else. Got to be strong, even if I know that this feeling is wrong. I've got to not care, even if I know that this world is meant to share. Wait a minute.
Hacknell's always been very clever at actually merging the political underpinnings of his songs into songs that sound on the surface just like simple songs of love and desire and disappointment. All the emotional register is exactly borrowed, copied straight from the standard soul canon. But there is, if you listen closely, there is a kind of coded politics to it.
You know, the political comment in Your Mirror is still, it's very subtle. It's saying, you know, okay, we're living in a kind of greed is good society, but hold on, wait a minute.
This is wrong. Even the birds still sing their faithful song. And your beauty lies within you. Look in the mirror, baby.
I mean, it says it all, I think, in the opening line. I've got to stand up for myself. The society don't care about no one else. And then I say in the chorus, this is wrong. You know, look in the mirror, look at yourself. Think about how you improve yourself as a human, not as a money machine.
What you gonna do when your friends have gone away and deserted you? You'll have to be strong. 24 hours can seem so long. You've got to not care and then not realize this world is meant to share. Wait a minute.
I have only one thing to say. You turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
We grew up through Thatcherism, we got rich through Thatcherism, which was a bitter irony, and as we grew rich, we got more and more opposed to it. And the culmination for me is a track like Wonderland on Stars, which is one of the best political songs I've ever known because it's so sweet. It's a political statement about the state of this country.
People, places, pursuing the chases. Our moments were chosen, her senses, explosions. Take your pulse and read it well. She never said you'd only get one chance.
Wonderland's about this buying your council house. I mean, that was what it was more about, is that I'd seen people like thinking they were liberating themselves by buying a council house. But when they bought the council house, mortgage rates were like about 3%. But after like a year or 2 years, they were like 15%.
Some societies said higher payments will begin just before Christmas. Rates could go up to around 15%.
Take your pulse and read it well. She never said you'd only get one chance.
So people were suddenly, they bought businesses or they bought properties and they were being crippled by the mortgage rate, and the very thing that she'd set out to liberate was actually falling to pieces because people couldn't afford to pay back their mortgages. And that's partly what that was about.
Our people no stronger, the blame I lay on her. Wonderland, Wonderland, it's beautiful. Wonderland, Wonderland, it's beautiful. Wonderland, Wonderland, fading away now. I hope it's coming. Fading away till tomorrow comes to haunt us all. Well, all it's now is gonna fade into tomorrow.
Well, Mick was a big fan of reggae and a connoisseur, actually. And on all the albums that I did with him, we tried to include one song that came from those roots. And on this one, the reggae track that we put together was interesting because lyrically, the subject is about models, you know, which he had a bit of an experience with, you know, as he was hanging around a lot of models, and this was his look at them and how they get older and things ain't quite the same.
You know, Mick liked to sort of have a look at that kind of stuff, you know, so he would hang around with models, and a lot of his girlfriends have been models. But I think he would sort of see the way they lived their lives, look at it and walk away and think, well, that's not the way I'm going to live my life.
I'd see the amount of cocaine people were using, and I mean, just going out partying with some girls who would say, I'm not going to bed tonight, I've got to get up at 7, and they just do coke all night, and when they, you know, before they'd start, they'd have a line of coke before they left the apartment and be off doing a job, and they'd be doing lines all the way through the thing to get them through the day.
Looking at yourself in the mirror, baby, telling yourself to be up this morning, holding in your hand another mirror, baby, 1 or 2 lines for confidence. Pretty little girls cry
So Model's really about that kind of, the sort of scene and being in a restaurant that's, you know, fashionable, but is actually crap. But people go there because of the scene, you know.
Eating alligator for dinner, baby. A restaurant that made it to the top. Smoothies always get to pay for dinner, baby. The food was the last thing you came for. Pretty little girls climbing to the top.
And so that it's really very much about Paris and Milan and the way it all was at that time.
One of the things on this one also is how gentle his vocal approach is to these things. You know, it doesn't oversing ever. Very, very gentle in the backgrounds. He did all these backgrounds. And the lead vocal. Total ease. Much the same way Bob Marley was, you know, he never oversang either. In fact, all great recording artists know how to use the microphone, and Mick was one of the greatest at it.
See them fall down, down, down. You can see them fall down, down, down. All fall down, 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 down. This lonely baby, down, down, down. You can see them fall down, down, down. You can see them down. You can see them fall. Down, down, down. All fall down. Down, down, down. This lonely baby.
Mick has got a swagger. You know what I mean? He believes he's good, you know what I mean? That starts with that. You have to believe it, regardless of what anybody else has to say.
Mick was a very mouthy character. He always had an opinion on everything. If he was in an interview and someone hit him up with something, he wouldn't go, oh, I don't know about that. He'd always hit him straight between the eyes with an opinion. So somebody like that, the press loved to build you up and then knock you down.
I guess you could say we were the darlings of the press for a very, or he was anyway, for a short space of time. But then they went off it. I don't know why exactly. It might be something to do with the way he was, the fact that he had quite a loud personality, and that he wasn't going to play the game. But it certainly turned from being quite a hip thing into a pop group that, you know, the hip press weren't going to bother with that much.
I don't think we were ever hip. I think that's a myth. We've been constantly gnawed at and chewed at by the media since the beginning of my career. We were an anti-Thatcherite band from the north, in the middle of Thatcher's peak in the south. The press never liked me. I was troubled because I was too political. I shouldn't be political. I shouldn't have red hair. I did everything wrong.
They took his self-confidence to be arrogance. He knew what he wanted. They didn't like that. He was from the north. He would tell them to fuck off, you know. And that brashness, they like to be kingmakers and they like to be king breakers. They didn't make Simply Red and they didn't break Simply Red.
And yet you get this side of the entertainment industry that makes me laugh in some ways, because they show their envy and their jealousy so clearly that you think, don't you see what you're saying about yourself when you do this? I'm really pissed off that Mick Hucknall gets all these birds and he's got red hair. What's he doing, that Ginger Minger doing with all these birds? Why can't I get a bird? You know, that's ultimately what they're saying. And I would read this and I just think, you poor little twat.
Yeah, I think people were jealous. And you know, I don't know. I mean, Hucknall is someone who loves girls and he gets girls, but he was single, so why shouldn't he?
But I have to say, in his defence, he could pull a good-looking girl before he was famous, because I can remember at Polly, when he was DJing, and he'd finished his course, but he was still knocking around and doing DJing at the Student Union. He had good-looking girlfriends then and wasn't short of a girlfriend. So I think he's always had a kind of charismatic kind of magnet thing going there.
But that was when he was a student, you know, wearing some horrible green man-made fibre jumper he'd bought from Sue Ryder. You know, before the clothes and the fame and the wealth, you know, he loves life. Mick loves life, And he's able to convey that, and he's able to listen when he's with those people that he wants to attract, or vice versa.
Feels so good. Your hands feel like silk down my back. Come on, come on.
I think in terms of the image, the direction, and perhaps most crucially the songwriting, Simply Red is in fact a solo project. It is Mick Hucknall. But I think it's always been very important to Mick that he has that band identity. He may be, far and away the most important member of that setup, but he's always liked to surround himself with top-notch musicians, and he's always liked, I think because of the music he plays, soul music, funk music, reggae music, it's always been essentially a band-driven music, and I think it's important to him that he has these people around him that he can feed off and use.
I had when I was a lad. Your face is just beaming. Your smile got me.
At that point, he drilled his band to the point where they could certainly compete with the other stadium acts of the time. And it's remarkable that music, which is really quite intimate in its appeal, actually translated as successfully as it did to the wide open spaces of these arenas and stadiums. But, he made it happen. And of course, the thing is, once music achieves a certain momentum in terms of its popularity, then all of these songs become anthems.
But we had a great following too that had been developed by touring for 10 years. Since 1985, we'd really not been off the road. We'd been off the road for about 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there, and then time to actually record a couple of months. But then we really, my memory is of virtually almost always being on tour.
Looking at yourself in the mirror, baby. Telling yourself to be up this morning. Holding in your hand another mirror, baby. 1 or 2 lines for confidence.
A lot of that set works phenomenally well live, which is one of the reasons that he's still around, is all those songs translated beautifully into a live context without just sounding like the record and boring your pants.
By the time this album came out, they'd permeated right the way through to serious mainstream, by which I mean not just young people. Young people's mums and dads were listening to Simply Red.
As good as these tracks were, it was down to him selling them in the end, and I think he made it a hit.
Well, he came up with a great album. You can't argue with 10 million people around the world that bought it. None of us could have foreseen that. And it just connected and it struck a chord, which is like, pop music, when it really connects with its audience, is just unstoppable.
This was the biggest selling record of not only 1991, but also 1992. And I think, along with an Oasis album and Michael Jackson's Bad, is the biggest selling album in the history of the British charts.
I'm not sure about that stat, but I think that I know that we were in the top 5 biggest selling albums in British musical history, which again is, makes you kind of go, Jesus. It was just like, wow. And you get used to it, you know, you just think that from the rest of your life then everything you're going to do is going to be number one all the time, and you just go off on this kind of, it was a very, very trippy, a very LSD kind of time, I think, you know, just surreal.
A lover's promise never came with a maybe. So many words I left unspoken.
I think his voice deserves its place in the canon of great British music.
All the pain you caused me. Making up could never be your intention. You'll never know how much you hurt me. Stay, can't you see that
Unfortunately, the people that have come up subsequently haven't been as exciting as the ones that were from the past. So it's another reason why I'm glad we got him.
I just have this abiding faith in the music and the performance that will shine through when I'm dead and gone. And I don't really care about the contemporary side of it, because I'm trying to make music that will last for a long time.
Look in the mirror, baby. Look in the mirror, baby.